Welcome back, everybody. I'm Kathy Resnichek.
And I'm Richard Pressler.
And we are going to be looking at Assignment 4 in Module 4 in the Tapped Wire Networking course. And so the last assignment was Layer 2 security features, and so Assignment 4 is Layer 3-4 security features. What are we going to cover in this assignment?
Well, in this assignment, we're finally going to talk about firewalls. It seems
Yay,
like we've held off for a while.
And boo firewalls sometimes, right?
Sometimes, yeah. First person you blame is the firewall administrator,
exactly.
Right? But we're going to talk about firewalls. We're also going to talk about features of routers to introduce security for blocking specific packets using access control lists.
Okay.
So we'll dive into access control lists, what they are, how to use them basically to allow or deny traffic on your network that you either want or don't want. We'll talk also about inspection tables and state tables. As you may recall from our discussion about TCP and UDP, when you have a session established, there's a very specific protocol. In the protocol, there's a very specific way the conversation is set up.
Right.
So with TCP sessions, there's a SYN packet, and then there's an ACK packet, and then there's a SYN ACK packet. So a firewall can look at that conversation and say, okay, this computer inside the network is communicating to a computer outside the network, and I see the traffic, I see the session, it's allowed that direction, so I'm also going to allow the response from outside the network. And that way you don't have to have your firewall full of different openings for things to come back that were requested from internally. So when the request comes from an internal computer, the firewall can automatically create the path back. And that's really a stateful inspection, because it's looking at the state of the session. And many firewall manufacturers have even created the ability to look at state tables for UDP as well. Even though UDP doesn't have a session, still there was a request from a specific user, a specific IP, on a specific port to another IP on a specific port. So if traffic comes back from that IP and that port, oh, it was expected. It's a two-way communication. And the firewall can say, yeah, I'll let that happen for a time, and then eventually I'll cut it off because there hasn't been any communication. It times out. So we'll dig into how those inspection tables work, how the translation tables work for network address translation as well. And then we'll also talk a little bit about route filters. And these are interesting because a route filter is a way for you to control even the visibility of certain networks. So for example, you could have a campus network, and you could decide that you want to hide a IP segment from the rest of the campus. And so there's ways with route filters to basically block the propagation in the routing protocol of that specific segment. And therefore it becomes almost invisible in a way. And there's reasons you might want to do that. You might want to say that from a student network, you're just going to make it impossible, not even a rule, but it would never be possible for it to communicate to the district's network management network from a student network. So there are ways to do that kind of thing with route filters. You also could have controls in place if you're exchanging routes with someone else and they're a third party. Like for example, you have a BGP session set up. Well, a route filter is a good way to say, yeah, I want to tell them about this network, but not these other networks.
These other ones,
I'm going to be very specific about what I tell them in that route advertisement. So we'll discuss that a little bit as well, because that can be used as a security feature too.
And just to remind everybody that these assignments are all focused on general principles, but we try to bring the context into K-12, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So looking at all this from a network perspective or network administrator perspective, but also within the context of the people who we expect to be taking these courses.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because we have some unique challenges when it comes to these areas. One of them is just that we utilize a tremendous number of IP addresses for workstations and laptops, because the students often have one device per student. So you have to plan your IP space, and then also you have to plan your network address translation, because all of those students are trying to get on the internet. So now you have to have your firewalls configured, and they have to be beefy enough to handle all of this network address translation happening, all of the state translation happening. So you've got all these stateful tables in the firewall, and they have to be robust enough and large enough that you can handle, in some districts, hundreds of thousands of computers that are all trying to get out on the same internet provider, and you've got to share the public IP space using the firewall. So
And
some
all
of that,
from 7 a.m.
yeah,
to 3
yeah.
p.m.
And some of that is sort of security, and some of it's just network planning and
Yeah.
scalability, really.
Yeah.
But the security part of it is, what traffic would you allow back into your network?
Right.
That's really what you have to watch out for. From the internet, what are you going to allow back in?
Back in.
Or from a student network, what are you going to allow them to do? Can
Out,
they go
yes.
to all of the district servers or not?
Right.
Can they access network equipment from a student network? So we're really digging into some of those best practices, you could say, for just the philosophy of how to protect different parts of the network using various layer 3 and layer 4 mechanisms.
Very important.
Well,